Okay, now Bulo, thank you very much for that awesome prayer. As I said earlier on, I'll be your host, and Ekwa Grandmaster. I'll be your host. Then Ekwa Grandmaster will be the moderator for this evening seminar. So Ekwa, please, are you around? Ekwa, good evening.
Yeah, Patrick, pleasant evening. I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll take our first presentation from Mr. Aboagye Jimah. He happens to be the group finance manager for the community hospital group. He's a solid guy. He's a chartered accountant. He holds MBA in finance. He's also a BComa. He holds a bachelor's degree in commerce from UCC and MBA finance from University of Ghana. He's also a chartered accountant, very solid person. He's much solid when it comes to the accounting space. So without much ado, Mr. Aboagye Jimah will do his first presentation. Mr. Aboagye Jimah, good evening. Mr. Aboagye Jimah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay.
Sir.
Good evening, Oman. I hope your viewers can hear me.
Yes, please. They can. They can.
Okay. Okay.
And you can also share your screen. The gadget is set for you. Okay. So, sir, these are your audience. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, colleagues.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Said earlier, I'm very thankful to the leadership of the Sleep is for the Weak Consult. I think you are doing an amazing job, and then kudos. Let's keep impacting knowledge. Let's keep sharing knowledge. Let's keep learning and unlearning. This evening, it's going to be a very quick one. We are going to talk about corporate governance, the role of accountants, the role accountants play in corporate governance. It's going to be a very good and awesome interaction. At the end of my presentation, I'll be expecting much questions, and then we can take it up from there. So by the end of this presentation, we should be able to understand what at all corporate governance is, some principles of good corporate governance. What we mean by some principles of good corporate governance is, for every company that you find yourself, what are the qualities you expect in there? What shows these companies are practicing very good or effective corporate governance? We'll have a look at a case study, an international one, of course, and then a local one, a Ghanaian case study. Then finally, our role as accountants in ensuring effective corporate governance. That is basically my presentation. Let's kickstart with corporate governance. So corporate governance, basically, it's all about how companies are directed and controlled. It's about the direction and control of the company. It's normally focuses on how businesses are run and how decisions are made. Who has the authority to make decisions? Who has the powers to make decisions? in whose interest are decisions actually made? For what purposes are the powers that have been vested in such authorities used? Or in which manner do they use such powers? And then who has the power to make decisions? So like I said, corporate governance is about the direction and control of a company. It is also how we effectively strike a good balance between the interest of company stakeholders. I'm sure as accountants, we are aware of every company's and our stakeholders. Basically, it's our shareholders, it's our management, it's our suppliers, it's our customers or consumers. It's about our tax authorities. It's about SNAIT, and then what have you. The environment we actually find ourselves in. How do we strike a balance to ensure that each interest or the interest of each of these stakeholders are met? That is basically what corporate governance is about. Now, the authority or the ultimate authority to ensure a very good or effective corporate governance is board of directors. They have the ultimate authority to ensure effective corporate governance in any company. So like we said, a well-governed company is a company where the board actually acts in the best interest of its shareholders, not in their own interest, in the interest of its shareholders and other stakeholders, and also in accordance with law. So that is basically about corporate governance. Now, when you move into a company, how are you able to determine that, oh, so this company, they are practicing or they are very effective in their corporate governance? Oh, this company, they are striking a very good balance between the interest of the various stakeholders. Oh, this company, they are serving the best interest of its shareholders and then its stakeholders. These are some of the principles or some alerts you will get to know that this company is actually practicing effective corporate governance. Now, these principles are very important because we will finally going to borrow some of these principles into the case study. So I believe my listeners would have to put down some points with regards to the principles, because the case study is about corporate governance, whether the company was effective or they were not effective. And then we're going to borrow some of these principles to see if actually they were effective or not. So the first principle of every good corporate governance or effective corporate governance is transparency. Transparency. The full disclosure, another word for that is full disclosure. They disclose fully the actual operations and the financial health of the company. They do not withhold information from the various stakeholders, the various key stakeholders. They don't hide information or they don't skew information to make it a bit favorable. They disclose fully the operations of the company. They disclose fully the financial health of the company, whether it's a good one or it's not a good one, because those are the key things you need to be able to make a very good decision or quality decision or an informed decision for the company. So transparency is very key in every company that practices a very good corporate governance system or has a very good corporate governance model. The second one has to do with, for such companies, they have a very independent and a strong board. A very independent and a strong board. What we mean by independence is they are not influenced by others, or their decisions are not based on what others think, or they are free from the influence of others. They are independent in the mind, and then perception-wise, they are very independent. So we say that in the composition of the board, the principles of good corporate governance require a substantial number of directors to be independent. So for every company, we know we have executive directors and non-executive directors. Executive directors are the directors who are actually involved in the day-to-day running of the business. They are part of management. Non-executive directors are not actively involved in the day-to-day running of the business. However, they take part in board decisions. So for every principle, a good principle, we require a substantial number of directors to be independent, or a substantial number to be, say, non-executive. Because for these people, they are not dependent on anyone. Executive directors can never be independent. What we mean by independent, I think for independence, the New York Stock Exchange classified or made some categories of people who are actually independent. So if you are an employee of the company, you are not independent. So that is how come executive directors are actually not perceived to be independent, because they are employees of the company. They take part in the running of the business of the company. If you have a very close relation, say your wife or your husband happens to be an employee of the company, you are not independent. If you are not an employee, you are a former employee over a period of 3 years, you are not independent. Or you have a close tie or a close relationship with someone who has been in a company or who is a former employee for a period of over 3 years, you are not independent. If you are a supplier, you supply products or goods to the company or services to the company, you can never be independent. So that is it about independence. And then we need an independent auditors too. Independent auditors. Auditors deemed to have been very independent. That is the principles of independence of the board. In as much as they have to be very independent, they need to be very strong. When we talk about strong, it's not necessarily about their muscles or whether they are very strong. It is about the varieties of skills or their skill sets. It is about their expertise. It is about their experience that they bring on board. So you can be very independent, but if you don't have the skill sets required to be on the board, it means that there is a problem with the corporate governance index. So they have suitable range of skills and expertise and experience that is required of them to be on the board. With that, they are very able to give professional advice, give quality advices and recommendations to help the company grow. So that is it about a strong and independent board. The third one we'll talk about is for a good corporate governance practice, there need to be honesty and integrity. There need to be honesty and integrity. The board must be able to give honest and professional opinion and advice. They should be able to give an honest opinion. Their advice shouldn't be skewed, or it shouldn't be skewed to favor, let's say, shareholders or to favor management. There should be independence of thoughts. They give honest opinion, and it is very professional, whether it's good or not. I mean, that is the advice they give. And they can never be manipulated for the purpose of presenting a more favorable impression. So we say that an honest board is always a trusted board. Now, looking at integrity, we should be able to behave in accordance with the high standards of behavior or ethical code of conduct. For every practice, I believe there are ethical code of conduct, and then we should be able to move by this conduct if you have integrity. The final one I want to talk about, there are a lot that I just picked up for the purpose of our discussion here. The final one I would want to talk about is responsibility and accountability. You see, most of the powers are in the hands of the board of directors, and so they should need to be able to show responsibility. They need to be responsible for their actions and then decisions. They should be actively involved in the decisions of the company. They shouldn't meet once in a year or once or twice every year to be abreast with information. Actively, they are involved in the decisions of the company. And then there should be proper oversight over corporate matters. They shouldn't leave management to make decisions. They should oversee the operations of managers. However, in their operations, they delegate. They cannot in any way work alone. They will have to delegate some of their powers, but they need to ensure that the powers they have actually delegated are of very good use. The powers they have actually delegated are of very good use. They are using it very well. And then certain key decisions within the company should not be delegated. They should retain certain key decisions like recommendations or determination of the salary or emoluments of management personnel, the appointment of auditors, the appointment of certain key management personnel should never be delegated. It should be done by them. Now, when you are responsible or when power has been given to you, authority has been given to you to make decisions, you need to be accountable to the people who have given you this authority. at the end of every particular period, periodically, go to them and account to them, oh, this is what I did with the powers that have invested into us. So we need to be accountable to the shareholders and very key stakeholders. And as accountants, how do we become very accountable? Health-wise, financial health-wise, we need to be accountable through the preparation and the presentation of financial statements. So that is it for every principle of good corporate governance. Now, these principles, transparency, responsibility and accountability, honesty and integrity, strong, competent, and independent board, we are going to bring it into a case study. We'll look at the international, and then we will have a look also at the local one. Now, I'm sure some of us have heard of this company, Lehman Brothers. So Lehman Brothers was an American global financial services firm founded in 1847. They initially started dealing in dry goods. Then it was a dry goods store. Then they moved into cotton and then to other portfolios. They finally decided to provide investment banking, trading, investment management, private banking, research, brokerage, private equity, and associated services. If you're following, we can continue. On September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. Now, hundreds of employees, mostly dressed in business suits, left the bank offices one by one with boxes in their hands. At the time of its collapse, this is very key, Lehman was the fourth largest investment bank in the United States with over 25,000 employees worldwide. So this was a company that happened to be the fourth largest investment bank in the US with over 25,000 employees. Yet on September 15th, most of the employees moved out with their boxes, their company. It means that they were sacked. It had $639 billion in assets and then $613 billion in liabilities. The bank became a symbol of the excesses of the 2007-2008 financial crisis. Now, this is what was collected from, this is a summary of Lehman Brothers and then they folding up and everything. Now we look at the key points from this particular company. Key points from this particular company for our purposes of our study. Now, at Lehman Brothers, 8 out of 10 directors met the independence. 8 out of 10 directors met the independence of standards of the NYSE in 2006. So it means that 8 out of the 10 directors were non-executive directors. Just 2 were executive directors. But they lacked the financial expertise and failed to reliably monitor Lehman. This was one of the key reasons why Lehman folded up or they filed for bankruptcy. Their directors were, though most of them were independent, but then they lacked the financial expertise. And this is a company which is a financial services firm. A financial services firm with most of their directors lacking financial expertise. That is very weird. That is very strange. And they failed to reliably monitor Lehman. So what principle are we looking at here? There was an independent board, but then they were not strong because they lacked the quality skill sets needed to bring on board to move forward Lehman. Secondly, they failed to reliably monitor Lehman. They were independent, they were not strong, and then they were not responsible and accountable. So they left whatever decisions management took was in the hands of management. They failed to do a proper oversight over the activities of management. So I've pointed out about 3 principles in here that they failed. 2, the Finance and Risk Committee met twice. I'm sure for some of us who happen to work in banks or who have come in contact with banks, we know the importance of the Finance and the Risk Committee. You see, for financial services, most decisions have to do with finance and risk. Most decisions have to do with strategic risk management. Yet, there was a Finance and Risk Committee that met twice the whole year. For financial services, for approval of loans to go out, for loans to be given out, for diversification into other portfolios, they needed the Finance and Risk Committee to assess the risk level of such decisions they were making. Yet, they met twice in a year. compensation committee met 8 times more than the audit committee. What this meant was that for the independent audit committee, they were not working. But then the compensation committee was working a lot. So when compensation committee meets, I'm sure we know what happens. We are recommending a lot of fat salaries, fat emoluments, fat allowances, fat car allowances and all. They were meeting severally to discuss how much allowance are we supposed to pay? Let's increase our allowances without recourse or without going back to Finance and Risk Committee to assess the actual financial health of the company before making a decision on their compensations. So their compensations that they were making or the salaries they were giving out to management, to key employees were never in tune with the performance of the company. There was poor oversight. This company took excessive debt. Of course, we expect something like this from a financial service firm where the Finance and Risk Committee were meeting twice. If you are just meeting twice, obviously you'll be taking excessive debt, and there will be no committee to be there to check on these things because they were not even meeting in the first place. So they kept on taking debt. They kept on increasing that without recourse to risk benefit analysis, without recourse to other portfolios. Strategic and risk management was poor. Of course, we expect strategic and risk management to be poor when Finance and Risk Committee was just meeting twice. So there was a compliance with the regulatory requirement for the composition of the board, but it was irrelevant here. It couldn't help them. The independence of the board couldn't help them because though they were independent, they lacked the level of training, skills, expertise to be able to give prudent and quality advice on the actual board. So that is what led to the collapse of Lehman Brothers. So my brothers, I'm sure we see the key importance or the importance of effective corporate governance, how it contributes to the success of every company. A failed corporate governance model or system is equal to a failed company. I mean, you are always on a time bomb if your corporate governance system is very poor. Okay, let's come back to let's just come back to Ghana, our own Ghana. And this had to do with the collapse of the banks. This has to do with the collapse of the banks. Okay, so I'm sure in 2017, mid-2017, 2018, we all heard of the folding up or the closure of some of the banks, or about more than 10 banks by the Bank of Ghana. Now, these are some of the excerpts from the Bank of Ghana reports, the governor of the Bank of Ghana reports. So the governor of the Bank of Ghana gave insights into the specific offenses that led to the revocation of the licenses of 10 banks. Amongst them were UT Bank, Capital and Capital Bank. I'm sure there are a number of banks. I just decided to list these few banks. Now, these are some of the reasons the governor gave. Number one, non-separation of activities of the bank from those of their holding companies. Then the moment you hear this, related party transactions comes in place. So the activities of the bank, so it was a group, like for instance, UT Group. UT Group has Mito Engineering Services. UT Group has the UT Bank, Mito Engineering Services. They have UT Technology. They have UT Construction. They have Progress Group Limited. They have insurance companies. So the activities of the banks were never separated from these other associates or these other companies within the same group or within the same umbrella. What it meant was that maybe UT was financing the salaries of maybe, let's say, construction banks. Some of the banks were not, some of the firms within the umbrella were not performing. UT Bank ended up financing the salaries, financing the operations of some of these companies. Yet they did not adhere to the requirement of IAS 24, related party disclosure and transactions. Now, banks did not adhere to credit management principles and procedures. They were heavily exposed to insiders and related parties with no evidence that interest was paid on these loans. So for some of these banks, they were giving loans to key management personnel. They were giving loans to other companies or associates within the group without any evidence of interest paid. So what it means that they gave to them, most of them ended up not paying the loans. And then the loans they were not paying, the principal they were not paying, how much more the interest? So for such a bank, definitely you wind up. So they were giving monies to them, but then there was no evidence that interest was paid on this loan. And whose responsibility is it to ensure good credit management principles and procedures? It is the responsibility of the board of directors. They were not doing any work. And then these insider deals were not shown. We have a lot of questions to ask. Were not shown in their, or declared in their financial statements. So the accountants failed. The independent auditors who are appointed by the independent board of directors failed, probably even came to their attention, but the board decided not to act. So obviously this was a failed board. This was a board that failed to instill in the company very good corporate governance principles. Funds of banks were diverted to other holding companies of the group. They were diverting funds to other operations. They were diverting funds to other companies. 2, they were excessively high executive compensation schemes, which were out of tune with the performances of the bank. They were just proposing fat salaries, allowances, and then other allowances for management, key management personnel, for the executives, without recourse to the performances of the bank. Now, compensations or remuneration should be aligned in any way to the performance of the bank. So whether the bank was performing, whether the banks were making losses or not, theirs was to be paying themselves fat salaries and then allowances. 3, the non-executive directors were accepting gifts from banks, and this compromised their independence and their ability to perform their fiduciary duties. So for directors who have been appointed to be non-executive or to be independent, the management found a way of giving them gifts, dashing them cars on their birthdays, giving them buildings on their birthdays and that. And obviously, once you're receiving such gifts, your independence will be compromised and you won't be able to perform your fiduciary duty. You wouldn't be able to act in the best interest of the company or the shareholders. And they were not checking the executive directors because anytime they were being bribed, they were given gifts, and it compromised their ability to serve as checks on executive directors. Board meetings were irregular, resulting in weak oversight. They were not meeting. They were not meeting to hold management accountable for their decisions that they make. The banks ended up borrowing from high net worth individuals at very high cost. It won't be surprising that they were even borrowing from the non-executive directors at very high cost. The internal control system was very weak. For every good corporate governance system, there needs to be a robust internal control system. There need to be regular checks on your internal control system to see if it needs improvement. If we need some variations, you need to vary some of them or not. But this was a situation where for some banks, the internal controls were very weak. There were no loan approval system. There were no financial reporting processes. There was a lot of mess. Final one, the capital position had been overstated in order to create appearance of compliance with capital adequacy law. So the accountants were overstating the capital position. So that, I mean, when the report is sent to their regulator, which happens to be a Bank of Ghana, or they will see, oh, this company is actually, the bank is actually performing. Where in actual sense, they were not performing because they had wanted to meet the capital adequacy law. So they ended up overstating the figures. And honesty and integrity comes to play here. They were dishonest and they had no integrity in this particular situation. And this was some of the major reasons that caused the collapse of these banks. So that is it for the 2 case studies. I'm sure we have some questions to ask by the end of my presentation. Finally, we'll look at what role do accountants play, or what role must accountants play to ensure very effective corporate governance system. So the role doesn't have to be just board of directors. We accountants, auditors, we have a major role we have to play in ensuring effective corporate governance system. Number 1 role we have to play, we have a role in ensuring transparency in the company. How do we ensure transparency? Like we say, that they are supposed to be accurate in their reportage, in reporting the operations and the financial health of the company. What is the major determinant of a financial health of a company? The financial statements, the financial position, the statement of the financial performance of the company. So accountants must be accurate and honest in reporting the financial health. When I was listing the reasons for the collapse of the banks, I'm sure you saw that some capital positions were overstated. They were not honest. But it is the duty of we accountants to ensure that we are accurate and honest in reporting the financial health of the company. Now, the OECD Principles of Corporate Governance mandates organizations to honestly disclose all information, including their financial statements, performance, and ownership for informed decision. It's a requirement that we do. And who are supposed to ensure that? It is we accountants. Auditors are also accountants. Auditors also have a role to play in ensuring transparency. After we have prepared the accountants have prepared financial statements, auditors, we as auditors are supposed to give a very true and fair view of the financial statement. Our view must not in any way be tainted. Our view must be true and fair. Our view should never be dishonest. Our view must not be misconstrued or must not be construed to favor some sections of the stakeholders. It has to be true and fair, regardless of how it is. Whether it's good or it's not good, let's report it as it is. Whether the financial statements are prepared in all material aspects in accordance with the financial reporting framework. My question is, when there were these insider deals in the various banks, when they were giving loans, diverting funds to other associates within the same umbrella, how come our independent auditors were not able to detect that there was a violation of IAS 24, which is related party disclosure about transaction and outstanding balances? They were not able to detect. How was that possible? So it means that they were also jeopardized in some way. So the possibility that this financial position and profits or losses may have been affected by the existence of related party. Of course, related party transaction has tremendously affects the position of every company. So when you look at what was happening, if they had detected or if they had disclosed fully, I'm sure there would have been a decision long ago. They wouldn't have been where they were. There will be some questions, there will be some queries and other things. So that is the issue at stake. Now, the second role we also have to play, we have a role in ensuring proper planning. The strategic plans of every company are normally done by the board of directors. But what do they need? Board of directors, they make the strategic plan. But as to the data that will be needed for these plans to be made, they are provided by we accountants. We provide very good financial data. When we don't provide very good financial data, the decisions that they will be made will never be informed because we haven't disclosed fully. So our ability to provide a very good financial quality and accurate and timely is very important. Financial data helps us in making our decisions. The board will be able to make decisions on how to function, where to invest, when to invest and how much to invest. The performances of some sectors or areas within the company, whether they are incurring more costs than they bring in. When we provide this timely and accurate data, they would be able to make a proper plan or be able to put in a proper strategic and tactical plan. We also have a role in ensuring cash flow management. It is not always about our strategic plan. It is always about our short-term plans too, because it is the short-term plan that culminates into our long-term plan. You can be profitable, but when you are not liquid, the probability for you to fail or to wind up is very high. So you are profitable in the long term, but then you are not liquid. You don't have cash, l'argent, currently to make decisions. So we accountants help them to address these short-term strategies and everyday necessities in the organization. They draw and give a clear picture of how much cash a company has in hand, helping it to prioritize and take crucial financial decisions. Finally, we accountants and auditors, we need to be abreast with our current corporate and tax laws. The board of directors, we are supposed to feed them with these tax laws. The tax laws that are applicable to our organization, it is our responsibility to ensure that we are aware of them. I'm sure recently there were some new laws that were brought in. I'm sure they reduced the e-levy from 1.5 to 1%, 12.5 VAT to 15%. There is also the introduction of the sustainability, is it sustainability tax or growth and sustainability levy? Those are things we need to be always abreast with to be help us inform or advise management and to also help them comply with these tax laws. So we must continually advise the board and help establish effective governance models which ensure compliance with these laws. Almost in conclusion, we always say corporate governance is not just a buzzword. It is not a word that we go by. It is fundamental part of today's businesses. I'm sure with the various case studies that we went through, you see how a failed corporate governance model led to the collapse of companies. So we accountants also have a major role to play in making sure these companies adhere to good governance practices. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you, my listeners, for listening to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gideon, for the amazing presentation. You have indeed educated us. We have now seen the importance of as accountants and companies to embrace corporate governance. So what I will do now is I will invite for a few questions and then we move on to the next presentation. So please, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and we take the first 3 questions and then Gideon answers. And then if there are any more, we take them as well. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Are we all okay with the presentation?
Yes, please.
Oh no, you should ask questions. Ask something.
Grandmaster.
Yes, please.
A question, please.
Okay.
Although accountants are really very effective rules, I wanted to know is Bank of Ghana doing their monetary rules as compared to what they were supposed to do in terms of the banking sector that led to the collapse of most of the banks? And how can we classify them as?
I didn't get a question, boss.
Suleimana, do you mind asking the question again?
I was asking whether the monitoring rules of Bank of Ghana was effective in terms of their either quarterly or yearly monitoring to the banks. If, in essence, they were manipulating figures and all those weak internal control that we have identified after the collapse of it, and what role did they play in those things?
Okay, thank you so much. I think the Bank of Ghana can never be excused from this mess or whatever happened. You see, they are the regulators of these banks, and so if they were very effective in their monitoring, there could have been some red flags that we're going to bring to their attention. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Now, so they are in 2 phases. So either they were not very effective in their monitoring role, and then 2, when you read the Bank of Ghana reports, most of their reports, they were giving them cautions. I mean, they were cautioning them, and they were even injecting some capital or some monies into the operations, hoping that they will rectify, hoping that they will do the right thing. But it happened that still they were not doing the right thing. So it wasn't just a one-off thing. It was a continuous process. 1, they were not really effective in their monitoring, and 2, when they detected some of these things, they kept on cautioning them. And I think when it got to the breakup points, they couldn't do anything about it, and they just decided to collapse said banks.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yeah, Stephen, please go on ahead. Stephen.
Yeah, so please, I want to ask that when those accountants were identified as aiding management to frown upon the laws, what punishments did ICA give them?
Okay, I think for that one, I will leave it to my boss, my My boss, Alasan, is with his IC, so probably he should be able to give us a prompt answer to that.
Okay.
When it is 10, because he happens to be with ICAG. Maybe he has some information.
Okay, so please, I have another question.
Okay.
So I want to know when we say
and before that, for Lehman Brothers, I don't know if you heard about that. Most of the accountants were jailed. The auditors went to jail. For Lehman Brothers, the accountants, those people who were found culpable, they went straight to jail. The auditing firm, the auditors who were behind who were supposed to oversee the managing directors, the accountants, they all went to jail. So that tells you the jurisdiction that we find ourselves in.
I am actually referring to our Ghanaian society.
Yeah.
The banking sector of Ghana. So I have another question. So I wanted to ask that when we say board members qualification, I want to know what kind of qualifications should board members have to be able to serve on board and help organizations run their corporate affairs properly.
So there is no one for all qualification. Like I was stating initially, that we said majority of them has to be independent. Okay. And then when we say independence, I also say like perception-wise, you should be seen as independent. And then you should be independent in the mind as well. Now, for every company, for instance, for a banking sector or a bank, at least you need someone who has worked in a management position in a particular bank, or a retired executive manager of a particular bank to serve on such board, because we are always talking about the requisite skill set, knowledge, and experience to be able to serve on a board. So it's not a one size for all. It depends on the company or the sector that you find yourself in. Now, for instance, if you have a company like, let's say Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, for the board of directors, it is not possible that you wouldn't have a medical doctor on the board, or a retired medical doctor who has served a key management position in maybe, let's say, 37 or anything on the board. It will be very disastrous, because it's a health sector, it's a health sector, and most decisions they're going to make is going to be about health. So obviously you need someone who has knowledge and vast experience in that practice. So I don't know if I've answered it. So it's not a one for all qualification. It depends on the actual sector that you find yourself in. But best practice requires that for every board, there needs to be a finance director who would help or advise on finance functions or decisions. For every board, there should be someone with a key knowledge in finance, because you see, for every decision, it will cover around finance. For every decision, there should be money. For every investment decision, you need money. For everything you want, you need money. So you need someone with an expertise for every board that has finance expertise to be able to serve on the board.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we take the last question and we move on to the next presentation. But before that, our host will do, okay, Felix. Felix, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. I think somebody wanted to know what ICA did in terms of sanctions to the accountants of these banks. And then our resource person redirected the question, and then he went ahead to mention that in terms of the Lehman Brothers, many of the accountants and then the auditors were jailed. Now, in auditing, the preparation of accounts and the responsibility of internal controls and detection of errors and fraud lies on the manager. So why would they go ahead to jail the auditors? because they are only to come and express an opinion on what statement they have audited. That is my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix. Mr. Jima, can you please take the question?
Okay, so his question was about why they jailed some auditors. Is that not it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so like I said, for auditors, it is one, you have to be very independent. And two, you need to be able to express a true and fair view of, so it's like an auditor is giving us an assurance on the financial statement that has been prepared. So for most decision makers, most investors, they rely on this assurance to make decisions. Okay, this is what the true and fair view of, or in all material aspects of this particular company. If you present a financial statement that has never been audited, I don't think you have any investor coming in to invest in your company. Of course, for public companies, I'm sure we are aware that it's a requirement that your financial statement is audited. Why is it so? Because there are investors along the corner, and then we don't want to have a situation where investors are not properly informed, or where investors have not been informed properly, objectively, to make a decision or to make decisions. So your information or your assurance gives some assurance to these investors to come in to make investments. That is why it is a requirement for every public company to have its financial statement audited. So auditors can never be excused, especially when it continues, when people are not disclosing information, when people are deliberately flouting financial reporting standards and framework. It is your responsibility of auditors to draw their attention. They know this is what is happening. And so if you're not doing that, definitely you are also culpable for such offenses.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jima. Please, do we have any other questions for Mr. Jima? Please put up your hand if you have any question. Okay, so now I'll invite the host. Okay, Isaiah, please, you are the last person for us. You're asking the last question for us. Is that okay?
Okay, Grandmaster, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My question is this. We believe the auditors doesn't give 100% assurance as far as the financial statement is concerned. And then mostly they do sampling when it comes to auditing. So my question is, why should they hold an auditor responsible for the collapse of a company? Meanwhile, we know that they don't give 100% assurance of what a financial statement or a true and fair view of the financial statement. That is my question.
Okay. So like I answered your other colleague earlier, I'm sure before this particular case, before the auditors they found them guilty and all that, a lot of investigations might have gone into it, and then we might not be privy to such investigations. So, however, I will give a plain answer without recourse to what actually happened. But I'm saying that, like we said, they don't give 100%, but you are supposed to give a true and fair view. It is possible that these auditors did not give a true and fair view. If it is possible, because if they've stated that there should be a true and fair view, it means that it's possible that you won't give a true and fair view. That is why there are some requirements for auditors that you need to follow before you are appointed. I mean, you shouldn't work for a particular company for, I think, over 5 years. There shouldn't be any conflict of interest. You shouldn't have any close relations. These are the things that could jeopardize your independence, and that could jeopardize your true and fair view or expression on the financial statement of the company. Like I said, it is a requirement that these people give a true and fair. It could not be 100%. But there could be, once they were flouting some reporting standards and frameworks, you can't say you wouldn't be able to detect them. One, you could say, okay, for 1 year you couldn't. For the second, third, fourth, consistent years, we were doing this consistently, and your auditor, you are telling us that you couldn't detect. No. Like the example with the banking sector, you see the related party issues. There is no way you could say that you as an auditor, you couldn't see. They were giving out huge loans to other related without recourse to the IAS 24. So there are some of them, though you don't give 100% assurances, but your assurances should be able to pick some of these issues. It shouldn't be consistent. It should never be consistent. Either that, then there wouldn't be any need for auditors. And then I'm telling you, most of these investors look at the assurances from these auditors to make investment decisions. These stakeholders look at these assurances from auditors to make decisions. That is why it's a requirement for public companies to have their financial statements audited.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jima. I shall now invite Patrick Osaikufo to announce the next, how do I say it? To announce the next guest, is it? Guest speaker, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Eko. Mr. Aboagye Jima, God bless you so much for this impactful lecture. We are most grateful, but we are not done yet. We are going to take our second lecture from Mr. Alhassan Yusuf Twawole. He happens to be the head of training and development at the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana. Mr. Alhassan, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so we are also doing well. Mr. Alhassan, your guest.
Thank you very much, Senior. I hope I can share my screen.
Yes, please, you can.
All right. Can you confirm if you can see the screen, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. All right. Before, good evening once again. My name is Alhassan Twawole. I work with the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana as the head of training and development. I'm privileged to be part of this discussion this evening. Indeed, corporate governance issues are very important. It is important that as accountants, we get to understand what the requirements of the law is. Before I go on with my presentation, I'm aware that an issue came up, the issue of the auditors and all of that. Ogidi mentioned me, and I want to respond to the issue. Gideon, so you invited me, and I want to make a comment briefly before we begin my presentation. Yes, so as you may be aware, once the issue of the collapse of the financial institutions happened, ICAG established a disciplinary committee in somewhere in 2018 to try and then a fact-finding committee, I must say, to try and then find out if indeed the auditors that were supposed to have played a role in those banks were culpable in any way or form. That's the 7 banks. So the fact-finding committee was established, and then they did their work. They invited the bank, the auditing firms that were involved, and at the end of it, some communique was given. So if you permit me, I want to go through what the fact-finding committee came up with. This is a class, a discussion, and these are corporate governance issues. It's important that we understand what really happened. So when we look at EY was the EY Chartered Accountant, that's Ernst & Young. They were the auditors for Sovereign Bank. Now, according to the findings by the disciplinary committee, EY complied with all the relevant provisions in the international standards of auditing. And the disciplinary committee did not identify any significant issue that requires disciplinary action against the firm for the audit work that they did. So for the collapse of Sovereign Bank, EY was exonerated. They did their work as auditors appropriately. For Capital Bank, the firm was PKF Chartered Accountants. According to the fact-finding committee, PKF did not obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence about the appropriateness of the management use of the going concern assumption in the preparation of their financial statement, etc. Then also the aggregate uncorrected misstatements in the financial statement were not evaluated and were also not taken into consideration in the overall conclusion in coming up with their audit opinion. Then some other issues. Now, the disciplinary committee were of the view that PKF was culpable in a way, and therefore they sanctioned the company and its engagement partner with a fine of 550,000 cedis with respect to the audit of Capital Bank. So for PKF, the three major issues that were found, they were a bit culpable in some of the issues, and for that reason, they were fined 550,000 cedis. J. Mills Lamte was also an auditing firm. They audited Construction Bank. And the disciplinary committee identified some 3 or 4 major issues. By the recommendation of the disciplinary committee, the council upheld the recommendation and sanctioned J. Mills Lamte and his engagement partner with a fine of 150,000 cedis with respect to the audit of Construction Bank's financial statements for December 2017. Beige Bank was audited by Morrison and Associates. The disciplinary committee identified certain infractions in the way and manner that the audit was conducted. And the disciplinary committee recommended, which was upheld by the council, that they should be fined 350,000 cedis with respect to the audit of Beige Bank's financial statement for December 2017, 31st December 2017. Deloitte and Touche, that's Deloitte, they audited Unibank, UT Bank, and Royal Bank. So 3 of the banks were audited by Deloitte. A number of infractions were identified. Okay, and the disciplinary committee made some recommendations. The recommendations were that Deloitte and Touche did not do what they were supposed to do. Indeed, there were some infractions in the nature and manner that the audit was conducted, for which reason the partners and then the firm, the engagement partner and the firm was fined a total of 1,150,000 cedis with respect to the audit of Unibank's financial statements, UT Bank's financial statement, and Royal Bank's financial statements. So yes, ICA took some action. I know there was an appeal by one of the firms, and in the end, yes, I think that the sanction was revoked, or yes, there was some agreement along the line. But just to add that, yes, one accountability was established with respect to the firms. They were sanctioned appropriately by the institutes. So if later on, if there are any questions on that, you can come up. But indeed, there was a disciplinary committee, and the recommendations of these partners or the firms were invited to a hearing. The fact-finding committee examined the kind of audit they did with respect to the books of the banks involved and the conclusions they reached based on the audits they did. In some instances, they were of the view that they did not conduct proper quality assurance with respect to the audits, and therefore they were sanctioned. So that is it with that. Now, with that out of the way, permit me to now begin my own presentation. Now, this is what we'll be doing. A brief introduction, which is not very long. I'm not going to take so much time. Then I'll try and then chip in something small as part of what Gideon did, the accountant in corporate governance. Is it really necessary that accountant should be part of corporate governance process? And if it is necessary, what are the ways by which an accountant can be involved in corporate governance? Then we also look at how to upgrade ourselves for the accounting role. That is the major discussion I'm supposed to have. So how can we, as accountants or as aspiring accountant, how can we upgrade ourselves to take advantage or to be part of the accounting profession that we want to, we admire so much, and then we conclude. So that is by way of introduction, by way of outline of what we are going to do. So let's look at the accountant in corporate governance in Ghana. Is it really necessary? I'm not going to bore you so much with definitions and all of that. That has been handled by Gideon expertly. So we just go to how accountants are involved in the whole corporate governance space. Indeed, Gideon also mentioned what we do as accountants in terms of corporate governance. Accountants prepare financial statements. We are preparers of financial statements. And we present those financial statements on behalf of management. So we are supposed to prepare financial statements, do financial reporting, and ensure that it is transparent. We are the gatekeepers of the funds of the organization. So we ensure that the organization is transparent from the viewpoint of the outside world. Internal controls are a major part of the whole corporate governance discussion. Now, it is accountant auditors who institute these internal controls in organizations and ensure that they are adhered to. So on that score, we'll say that accountants are involved in corporate governance. We also do audit and assurance. That's a basic thing that auditors do. Yes, we are involved in risk management in one way or the other. We identify risks, we assess the impact of the risks, we propose ways by which we can mitigate or eliminate those risks. So we are involved, and we know that risk management is a major responsibility or a major part of governance issues in organization. Compliance and ethics issues, shareholder communications. Accountants prepare financial statements as a way of rendering accountability for the resource that has been entrusted in the hands of management by the shareholders. So yes, by so doing, we communicate to the shareholders during AGMs, annual general meetings, for whatever. So we report to them indeed that these are the resources we entrusted in the hands of management. This is what management did in the course of the year, and these are the results. Advisory role, we advise management, we advise the board in terms of key decisions that they will want to take. And also we perform monitoring and accountability. So accountants are very much involved in the whole corporate governance systems globally. How are we involved as accountants? On what level, at what level are we involved? So let's look at the involvement of accountants in corporate governance. The level of involvement could be put into two. We have the voluntary involvement and the mandatory or legislative requirement. I know there was a question, or I think Gideon tried answering a question about how accountants are involved, something like that, yes. But we as accountants can decide, we could make a voluntary decision to find ourselves in corporate governance. For instance, if there is an election to appoint people or to elect people to serve on boards or at corporate governance levels, we as accountants or we as individuals who elect to take up that role. So that is a personal decision and it is wholly voluntary. Then we have one that is mandatory and which is a legislative requirement. There are certain private sector laws and then public sector laws that have been enacted over the years, which has made provisions for accountants to be involved in corporate governance. Now, in the earlier presentation, Gideon gave a trajectory of what has happened with the collapse of the banks. Following the collapse of financial institutions, a number of legislations were formed or were enacted, and these legislations, directives, policies have come to solidify the role of corporate governance in institutions. So let's look at how private sector laws and public sector laws have been enacted to ensure that accountants play a major role in corporate governance. For instance, when we look at the private sector, of course, the Companies Act operates for both some public sector entities and private sector entities. But following all that has happened, when the Companies Act was revised in 2019, certain sections of it has come to mandate the role of accountants in corporate governance. For instance, Section 138 talks about the qualification of an auditor. Who can be an auditor of a company? By that section, you cannot be an auditor of a company if you are not licensed by the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana. So just by that provision or by that reinstatement or by the law, by the Companies Act, you cannot work as an auditor. And we all know that every company is supposed to have an auditor. If you are registering, Registrar General Department, your initial registration, subsequent renewals, you are supposed to indicate who your auditors are. And not anybody at all can perform that work as an auditor. The person will need to be licensed by the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana. Then there's also a qualification criteria for directors. And this qualification criteria for directors also give some major qualities that a director must have. And accountants are some of the key persons who are recommended for appointment to the director position of organizations. Company Secretary, Section 211 of the Companies Act indicates that for the directors of a company should appoint company secretary, and those company secretaries should either be a member of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries or the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana. It presupposes that the role of accountants is critical to the extent that even the secretary of the organization will need to be either a chartered secretary or a chartered accountant. Now, aside these Companies Act, other industry directives following the collapse of the financial institutions have made certain provisions in the law. For instance, the Bank of Ghana's Fit and Proper Persons Directives of 2019 has indicated that for one of the key requirement for persons who should be appointed as directors in banks, financial institutions, okay, should be that the person should have an accounting background. So that Fit and Proper Persons Directive has mandated that for anybody to appoint someone as a director, one of the requirements that you should consider is that the person should have an accounting background. It's not saying that every director should have an accounting background. No. What it's saying is that accounting background should be one of the major things that you should consider. That same BOG released some corporate governance directives in 2018. All of these directives came up as a result of what has happened in the banking sector. And these corporate governance directives by the BOG also indicated that directors should have accounting and finance backgrounds. Okay. Then the Security and Exchange Commission also released corporate governance directive for listed companies. You know, SEC is the one that is responsible, the regulator for listed companies. In 2020, they also came up with their corporate governance directives. And again, having an accounting qualification, chartered accountant, is one of the major requirements for organizations or listed companies to consider in appointing directors to their board. So yes, by law or through legislation, companies are now looking out for persons with accounting background for appointments to their boards. So this is for the private sector. Now, when we go to the public sector, the first we can talk about is the National Management Act and then the regulation. The PFM Act, which was promulgated somewhere in 2019, PFM Act 2016, 2019. The things are jammed up. It came up, and then the major provision in that law was first the fact that it repealed the ARIC, the Audit Recommendation Implementation Committee, and it instituted what we call the Audit Committee. And by that provision, Section 86 of the PFM Act, it mandates that all government entities should have what we call audit committees. And what is the composition of these audit committees? It is supposed to be composed of independent members and then members from the organization. Now, 3 independent members as well as 2 members nominated by the organization. For these 3 independent members, at least either 1 or 2 should be nominated by them. So ICAG and then the Internal Audit Agency nominate these 3 persons to perform or to act as independent members of the audit committee. And they perform marvelous functions. Indeed, I just came from an audit committee I serve on, and we developed a number of policies for the organization. So that is, and it is by virtue of the provision of the PFM Act. That's why some of us have gotten the opportunity to be on such boards or committees. Aside the PFM Act, other legislation that govern the public sector, that the Ghana Audit Service Act 2000, and then the Internal Audit Agency Act 2003, all of these make provisions on how someone or the role that accountant can play in terms of the governance. Let me add that the audit committee is a key corporate governance requirement in organizations, covered entities, and you cannot have a covered entity without having an audit committee. Without an audit committee, it is a major infraction of the law. There's a PFM Act. So yes, accountants have been elevated in terms by law and also by voluntary actions by the various accountants. So with that said, now let's look at how we can upgrade ourselves to take advantage of these provisions of law. Because if the law has made it mandatory for organizations to appoint people, appoint accountants to serve on these boards, and we don't have the accountants, then what happens? So we as accountants will need to now develop ourselves, upgrade ourselves to take advantage of the provisions of the law so that we can also be considered when the time is up. So we are going to discuss how we can upgrade ourselves for the accounting role. So to qualify to be at the table of men, like I said, the table of men in this instance is to be at the board level or to serve in any capacity on the board. To qualify, we need to prepare ourselves. How do we prepare ourselves? We are going to look at how we can prepare ourselves to take advantage. Now, the first thing that we want to do is to consider the initial education requirements. Before anybody can practice as accountants, you should have had some basic or initial education. Indeed, when we look at the international education standards, it talks about initial professional, initial professional development. Okay, so you should develop yourself in such a way that you can be considered. So what is your initial education in? I must add that initial education, although it is very important, it is not fatal. The fact that you don't have a background in accounting from the scratch does not mean that you cannot develop yourself in the field subsequently. We have people who have done sciences, who have done engineering, and are now chartered accountants. We have people who never had any business background at the senior high school level, but are now very successful chartered accountants. So yes, although you may have needed some background in accounting or business education at the initial stage, even if you didn't have it, it doesn't stop you from acquiring that education now. So a business or accounting degree is also an addition which can help you to build a very solid career in accounting. Of course, once you move from the degree level, then we should be looking at the professional accounting education. So yes, preparing yourself to take up the professional accounting qualification is a critical stage in getting yourself ready to take up or to take advantage of the provisions of the various laws. So now let's speak about qualification as a CA. We all know, I'm very sure that people on this call or all of us on this call have some understanding of the role of a chartered accountant. So CAs are highly regarded in the accounting field. Indeed, in recent times, there's no job advertisement for an accountant that does not have anything about CA. This goes to tell us the very high pedestal at which employers put accountant is a highly regarded qualification in the accounting field. So yes, qualifying as a CA will put you at a level that will help you to attain the standard that you want. Aside it putting you at the standard that you want, it also opens up many career opportunities. Like I said, once you qualify as an accountant, as a CA, aside you get to the job, there are other career opportunities that may come up. This, what we just mentioned, okay, the requirements of the law. By qualifying as an accountant, you may get opportunity to serve on a committee. You may get opportunity to serve on a board. And serving on a board or a committee could open up many other opportunities for you. I have been lucky, yes, and by having the opportunity to serve on a number of boards or committees, have had many opportunities to develop and go further. So yes, it opens up many career opportunities. Perhaps by not being a CA, I wouldn't have had some of these opportunities. And of course, if we are talking about qualification as a CA, then ICAG is the option that I'll recommend for you. ICAG is the regulator in the country, established in 1963 by 170, that's the Chartered Accountant Act. Recently, that act was repealed and a new act, Institute of Chartered Accountants Act 2020, Act 1058, came up. And this act is what is governing the profession in the country currently. Now, by provisions of that act, if you are not a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, you are not permitted or you are not allowed to practice accountants in Ghana. And then when we look at Section 44 of the Act, it provides that non-members of ICAG are supposed to abide by the directives and then the policies of the Council of the Institute. So if you realize, recently there was a notice from the Institute about non-members who are working as accountants. Of course, you cannot have a medical medicine if that person is not regulated by the Medical and Dental Council. You cannot have someone practicing as a lawyer if that person hasn't been certified as by the General Legal Council. So why do we have people who are practicing as accountants, who are practicing accountancy in Ghana, who are not regulated by ICAG? That is not fair. It's a profession. And if you cannot do it in law, cannot do it in medicine, cannot do it in engineering, why should we as accountants allow people who are not accountants to be working as one? And that is why this new act has come to solidify the position of ICAG as regulators, and we are trying to enforce. And then that portion of the law, the non-members, is under my office, and we are working hard to enforce that provision. But before we can enforce the provision, we will need to bring everybody under one umbrella. How can you regulate somebody you don't know? So the initial stage is that we advertise that if you are not a member of ICAG and you are practicing accountants in Ghana, you need to register with the institute. So once you register with the institute, we will now have the opportunity to regulate you. In that case, sanctions may not be on you. Okay. Now, aside qualifying as accounting, you need to make yourself relevant in the profession. Because if you want to stand out, there are so many chartered accountants in Ghana. At the last count, we are getting to almost 10,000 chartered accountants in the country. How do you make yourself seen? How do you make yourself relevant in the profession? You need to be recognized if you want to stand out. There are district societies of accountants. The district societies are just community association of accountants. So, for instance, we have Temba District Society, Spain City District Society, Car City District Society, Accra West, Ghana. So those are groupings of chartered accountants in those communities who have come together. And the important thing about these societies is that you get to network, you get to hear of opportunities, you get to make yourself available to serve. Indeed, when ICAG was supposed to nominate people to serve on audit committees, what we did was to rely on the district societies because we didn't know where all accountants were. So what we did was to write to the various the various societies across the country that, okay, these are the covered entities in your locality. They have requested for chartered accountants to come and serve on their audit committees, nominate people, and then submit their list. So if you don't belong to the society, how do we as an institute get to give you opportunities? Aside that, ICAG has some 6 faculties. These 6 faculties provide an avenue for us to share knowledge and then to grow. Knowledge sharing is a major principle that we as accountants are supposed to imbibe. The faculties are 6. If I haven't forgotten, we have the financial reporting faculty, we have the tax and fiscal policy faculty, we have the corporate governance faculty, we have the public financial management faculty, we have the corporate financial management faculty, and then there's audit and assurance faculty. There are 6. And they are specialized groupings of members. Once you qualify as an accountant in Ghana, we are required to select a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3 faculties that you belong to. And then you share knowledge, ideas. Indeed, yesterday, the tax and fiscal policy faculty had a lecture on the budget. So they discussed tax provisions or the provision that we want to see in the budget, and they are submitting their recommendations to the Ministry of Finance for inclusion in the annual budget. And that is the work of the faculties. Aside that, we have ICAG committees. In ICAG, there are a number of council committees: Technical and Research Committee, Education Training Committee, Admissions Committee, Examination Committee, so many committees. You can be relevant in the profession by aligning yourself or making yourself relevant to be selected to serve on these committees. Then we've also spoken about audit committees. Tuition, there are a number of teaching providers in the country. Wampenyi is doing very well with his Sleep is for the Weak consult. Indeed, it is one of the leading tuition providers in the country currently. There are other tuition providers across the country. You can as well be part of the process to mentor others to be chartered accountants in Ghana. You can also take leadership positions in many organizations that are there. So yes, you can make yourself relevant in the profession. And by so doing, you upgrade yourself and make yourself seen and known, so that if there are any opportunities out there, you can be considered or you can be seen and then recognized. For somebody to upgrade themselves, one way to do it is to acquire certain skills. As accountant, I'll recommend a number of skills to you: technical skills, software proficiency, analytical skills, and attention to detail. These are 4 strong areas that we want to consider. For technical skills, you cannot practice accountancy if you lack the technical knowledge in accounting. You need to have a strong understanding of the accounting principles and practice. Particularly, you need to know the standards. You can do that by undertaking online courses, attending workshops, seminars, or peer tutorials. Okay, so you need to develop and build technical skills. That is the way that you can upgrade yourself to be considered for a corporate governance role. To what use will an accountant be if you don't have the basic technical skills to practice as one? Then the software proficiency. We all know where the world is going now. Okay, we are moving from a manual system to a highly automated and technology-savvy world. So you need to be quite conversant with softwares and then IT skills. There are a number of accounting softwares in the system: QuickBooks, Excel, ERP, specialized ERP system like Sage and all of that. They are available and you can make yourself conversant with them. You need to be proficient in these tools because it is now a major requirement of the field. Analytical skills. Accountants are supposed to analyze financial statements and help management to take a decision. You are going to sit on boards. You are going to sit on committees. They are going to rely on your skills, your analytical skills, to be able to interpret financial statements and take decisions. If you don't understand, if you are not able to analyze issues, then you are not a good accountant. So you need to improve upon your analytical skills by attending conferences, by speaking to people, by reading wide, by opening your mind, by getting information from different sources. Then you also need to pay attention to detail. You cannot have an accountant who does not read, or accountant who is very rough and doesn't pay attention to detail. So accuracy is critical in accounting. If you present financial statements and it is full of errors, I'm not sure people will take you serious. So you need to put or pay attention to detail that you present in the financial statement. Then also you need to cultivate a keen eye, okay, for details. And that is also one way by which you can make yourself relevant to prevent errors in financial records. If there are errors in financial records, once again, people will not take you serious. And even they'll be laughing behind your back. Accountant way, or you have financial mistakes in and you don't want that to happen to you as an accountant. So you need to pay attention to detail. Indeed, if you don't pay attention to detail as an accountant, you may have situations where someone will commit fraud in your name. People will forge your signatures. People will let you sign documents that you are not supposed to sign. So you need to pay attention to detail and open your eyes wide. One other way by which we can upgrade ourselves is to acquire practical experience. We are people who are now trying to be accountants. We are people who are already in the field. Now, how can I, somebody who is starting the profession, how can I get this practical experience? The first one is that you can consider internships. Okay, once you are in school, or even if you are not in school and you are home, consider going on attachments. Okay, there are a number of organizations. The thing about some of us is that we always want to be paid. So sometimes when we go and then there's no payment involved, we give up. But internship is one very important process or way by which we can gain valuable practical experience. If internships are not available, then you can take up part-time jobs. Whilst you are still schooling, when you close, or even during your vacations, you can attempt part-time jobs. And if all of volunteerism is one other way by which you can get practical experience. Some organizations, especially the SMEs, they may not have the resources to employ you, but you can still make yourself relevant to them by volunteering to assist them. And once you begin to assist and they see your worth, they see the value you're adding to the business. Anytime there's an opportunity, you'll be the first to be considered. Even if they don't consider you, they may make a recommendation to somebody that, oh, Charlie, Unipe or you to consider the person if there's an opportunity. So yes, you don't need to always look out for money. Once you're starting your career, sometimes it's good that you build the experience. And after building the experience, the money can come later. And then for those of us who are writing the ICA, I'm sure you have heard of the authorized training employers. ICAG will now want to monitor the practical training experience or the practical work experience you are gaining as you're a student, so that immediately you finish the examinations, you don't need to now go for reference letters, by which time we will have monitored your training right from when you registered as a student up to the time that you qualified, and we straight away enroll you into full membership without requiring that you submit what we call reference letters. Because now people can sit in their room and conjure reference letters, which you have no way of verifying. One way by which we can be relevant or upgrade ourselves is through networking. Networking is very, very important. Now, how do your friends see you? What are the kind of friends that you have? What is the network that you are keeping? According to Porter Gill, your network is your net worth. If you have, excuse my language, if you have idiots as your network, then indeed you will be the next idiot. There's a saying that if there are 5 of you and 4 of your friends are idiots, then you are the next idiot. So yes, the kind of network you keep is very important. Then according to Robert Kiyosaki is one of the richest persons, is a best-selling author, etc. He says the richest people in the world look out for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. So indeed, if even the rich people are looking out for network, how about you? How about you? We go from Pong. Even the rich people, they are looking at building networks. What about you? The world is such that there's a saying that we all joke with, that the world is about whom you know. Indeed, it is about whom you know. Now, if I have a business, I'll be more comfortable employing somebody I know who can do the work than perhaps a strange person who I have no idea of. So yes, your network is a very important source of upgradement, so that if there are any opportunities, in between 2010 and 2015, I was working with the University of Cape Coast. In 2014, I see somewhere the end of 2014, somewhere around that time, yes, ICAG advertised a position for, they were trying to open an office in Cape Coast. So a regional manager for Central and Western Region, that's Cape Coast Taekwondo. I was in Cape Coast, newspaper, but I was there when a friend called me, a mate in the university actually. Charlie, ICA for I adverts. And I think looking at you being in class with you, I know that it's an opportunity that you want. I know your capabilities. Okay. And based on that application I did, indeed, I applied. I was in Cape Coast. The application was supposed to have been handed over in hard copy. I did the application and sent it down to my friend, and he paid car, or he came all the way from wherever he was to submit it at the ICG head office in Accra on my behalf. I was invited for the interview, and by the grace of God, I got that job. And here we are now. Okay. And it is because of the network I had built whilst in school. For some people, once they are in school, they will try to keep to themselves. Sometimes, yes, we all know there are lessons that has made us keep to ourselves. But at a point in time, once you are growing, once you are developing, you find some people or a network that you can roll with. It's a professional network. It doesn't mean be very good friends with everybody, but you should build a network that you can rely upon anytime there is a need. So how do we do that? You can attend accounting-related events, conferences, and seminars in your area to expand your professional network. ICAG organizes conferences. There are a number of seminars that are organized by people, various groups. Sleep is for the Week Consult is doing a lot. They're organizing this seminar for all of us. Now, how are we going to take advantage of the people on the call? Okay, how do we build our network? Because the people you are seeing today, they are the same people who you meet at the top. Now, if those people are at the top, how do they open up, or how do they get you opportunities? By networking now and developing the bond together so that they become a part of your family once you grow up. You may also join online forums and LinkedIn groups, which are related to the profession, to connect with professionals in the field. Every now and then you have LinkedIn requests, and because people have seen the groups you belong to or where you work, they want to be part of your network, and that is brilliant. I support that. We all do that. So that is how you can build your network. Get in touch with people who are in your field. Because once you are in the field, almost everything you'll be doing will be in the field. And therefore, get to know people so that you grow with them together. One other way of upgrading ourselves is to stay informed. According to Benjamin Franklin, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Johnny Miller is saying that in the world of information, ignorance is a choice. There's so much information in the world currently. So if you decide not to seek for information, then you have made a choice to be ignorant. Sometimes people finish, but you cannot be a good accountant if you don't read, if you don't stay informed. Accounting is a profession that is changing every now and then. Almost every year there is a new standard in the profession. Either it's an accounting standard, either an IFRS, an auditing standard, sustainability standard. Every now and then there are standards. But how can you practice the profession if you don't stay abreast with some of these changes in the laws? So you need to keep up with industry trends, changes in the tax laws, changes in accounting standards, so that you will be recognized for your knowledge and your expertise. It is not right for you to be an accountant and stay in the small corner that you have. And that is why when you go to some public sector organizations, we have young people who are booting out the old generation, because these old folks have decided that they're not going to learn again. They are not going to develop themselves. They have tagged themselves as BBC. So even if the world is moving digitally, they don't even want to be part of it. But that is not how you grow. That is not how you upgrade yourself to take advantage of opportunities. So you need to stay informed. You need to keep up with industry trends. You need to subscribe to accounting journals, website, newsletters. You need to read business information. I'm sure some people on this call, anytime they are watching TV and they see business news, they skip it or they change the channel. But how can you be in a profession, be an accountant, but you don't want to listen to business news? You don't know anything about exchange rate. You don't know anything about interest rate. You don't know whatever is going on in the business world. There are people on this call who don't even understand the domestic debt exchange program. Okay, the IMF bailout and everything. Some people are on this call who have no idea of what it is about. Why will you do that to yourself if you are practicing accounting? You need to stay informed to be relevant. Please take advantage of the vast information that is there. There are so many resources that we have at our disposal. And we will need to stay relevant. We need to stay informed by keeping up with whatever is going on. So please, let's listen to the news. Let's read information. Let's ask questions. That is what will keep us staying informed. Then, of course, the soft skills. The soft skills. In Akan, there's a saying that there are people who have a very terrible attitude. You meet them and you don't want to meet them again. There are people that you employ and you regret. There are colleagues that you are in the same office with, and everybody knows that they like fight. I'm sure in our organization, we know people like that. But why will you do that to yourself? Why will you let yourself to be tagged? There's something that we call emotional intelligence. Yes, even if you are angry, find a way of managing your emotions. Find a way of expressing your emotions in a non-harmful manner. So you need to have soft skills. You need to find a way that you communicate with people, build teams, have the skills to work in teams. If you are working in an organization, if you are an accountant, you cannot work in a silo. You need to know how to present reports. You need to be able to speak to reports, prepare presentations, speak to them, solve problems. Soft skills get little respect, but they will make or break your career, according to Peggy Claus. So yes, people tend to disrespect soft skills, but indeed, they may make or break your career. Your technical skills might get you the job. It might get your foot in the door, but your soft skills, your subai, are what open most of the doors to come. There is no benefit in being arrogant, but you stand to gain a lot if you are respectful, if you are humble, if you are willing to learn, if you develop good or strong interpersonal skills, especially your clients and your colleagues. These are people who know you. These are people who can recommend you for opportunities. Why will you be so bitter with them? Why will you develop some kind of attitude so that you are not able to work with them? No, it shouldn't be so. Your clients, they will recommend you. Your colleagues, they will see opportunity, they will inform you. People you come into contact with, they are the ones who will see opportunities. They are people you meet at interviews. They are people who can make a case for you. So, but you don't know who can make that case. You don't know who is watching you and at what point in time. So why don't you develop the attitude so that even if nobody is watching you, you are doing the right thing. Even if nobody is watching you, you are communicating right. You are working in teams. You are solving problems. You are making yourself relevant. You are giving advice. You are taking advice. You are respecting authority. You are making your case, but in a respectful manner. It doesn't take anything from you, my people. Yes, unless you are self-employed, at a point in time, you will need to develop a CV, a resume. You need to attend an interview. So to upgrade yourself to perform the work as an accountant, you need to have a resume that speaks to you. You need to prepare and attend an interview so that you can be given a job. Your resume is your personal advertisement. Make sure it sells the best product, and that best product should be you. You need to have a resume that highlights your education, your certification, your skills, and your relevant experience. There are a number of softwares, there are a number of formats that are available online. If you are starting accountancy now, if you are now coming into the profession, how do you have a resume that will project you? Please, there are a number of software that you can use to develop or to design one that can sell you. Before you can go for an interview, or once your resume is selected, you need to practice interview questions that are specific to the accounting role. You need to emphasize your knowledge of accounting principles and your ability to work effectively in a team. Because success in an interview is all about preparation. The more you prepare, the more confident you are, and the more likely that you get a job. So prepare well, practice well, get a solid resume. And once you are selected to come for the interview, you need to prepare well and go and ace the interview, and certainly you get a job. Continuing education. Learning never exhausts the mind, according to Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, we have said already that you need to keep yourself informed. In ICA, you will call it continuing professional education. Indeed, every profession that you belong to requires that you do CPD or CPE. That's how others will call it. But we are saying continuing education, even if you're a chartered accountant, even if you've reached the highest level, it doesn't mean you should stop learning. Continuous learning is a minimum requirement for success in any field at all. I've already indicated that accounting standards and regulations change every now and then. You need to consider continuing education courses or workshops to keep you abreast. And the interesting thing is that once you attend these courses, you get to meet new people, you network, you develop from there. Okay, so continuing education is a must once we are in the profession. And of course, to upgrade yourself to take up the accounting role, you need to set career goals. Your goals are the roadmaps that will guide you and show you what is possible for your life. You need to define your career goals in accounting. Everybody, there are many branches of accounting. Okay, you can decide to do public sector or private sector. In each of these sectors, there are many branches. There's audit, there's accounting, there's financial accounting, there's management accounting, there's cost accounting, there's taxation. There are so many branches. They have the forensics, they are even the academia. Some of us, if you put us in a typical accounting role, you are limiting us. We don't want to sit and be preparing financial statements. Others will prefer to do the auditing. Some of us don't want audits. There are people who love taxation. So you need to define your career goals in accounting. And once you define the goal, once you define what you want to do, you now follow that path. You cannot be a jack of all trades, but a master of none. You need to define what you want to do. Because once you set the goal, it becomes the first step in turning the invisible into the visible. You need to have clear goals. But once you have the goal, they direct your path to achieving something. So determine where you want to be. And once you determine where you want to be, there are various or there are wide resources that can help you to guide to get there. So for example, if you decide that you want to be in taxation, how do you become a tax expert? There are mentors. There are professional bodies that are responsible for taxation. There are people in the field already who can guide you. The organization that need tax experts. If you decide to be an auditor, how do you go about it? Even under auditing, there is external audit, there is internal audit. So there are so many areas that you can look at as a person in the accounting role. And once you choose any of these, it becomes your path and you can progress in it. Some of us, we chose to be in academia. I don't even know why and how, but that is where we've been, and I think we love what we do. Then finally, I think the most important one is to have principles and self-respect. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. As accountant, we have some fundamental principles that we are supposed to abide by. The profession enjoins us to abide by certain principles. We need to have integrity. Charlie, if today I ask your friends about you, what would they say about you? Assuming your friend has a company and there's only one slot, do you think that friend is going to employ you based on your character? I know we've already spoken about that, but integrity is being straightforward, is being truthful, is being honest. Are you honest? Are you truthful? You have integrity. Can people count on you? If you want to have a very successful career in accounting, you need to have integrity. Of course, it is very easy to try to collude and then steal money or perpetrate fraud in accounting. But Charlie, your integrity is at stake. And if you follow the money, you end up disgracing yourself. We have people who rose to the pinnacle in the field, but because of one thing or the other, they are falling. So let your integrity be your guide. Because if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. You need to be objective. Objective means that you don't allow bias and undue influence to take center stage if you have to take any decision. Then there is confidentiality. You're an accountant, you are not a parrot. You come across so much information in your work as an accountant, as an auditor, as a tax expert. But that information is not for you to go and say, Charlie, close your mouth. You need to have some respect. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, okay, as we may all know. But if the exceptions do not come to play, keep information to yourself. You need to have professional competence and due care. And we mentioned that professional competence is about obtaining their qualification, maintaining their qualification. You need to have due care. People have entrusted, they are confident, they trust that you give good advice. You need to ensure that you give the advice to the best of your abilities. If you think that you don't have the expertise, refer to somebody who has better expertise in the area for the advice. And then also professional behavior. We have a profession to protect. You cannot come and spoil our name. There are people who are spoiling the name of accountant. But once we find you out as the profession, ICAG, we will make sure we deal with you. There's a disciplinary committee that is established by law, by the Act 1058. And every now and then, people will report accountants, audit firms, and we invite them. Some people's licenses are revoked. So you need to be sure that you behave professionally in the in the accounting profession, and that will help you to go. Conclusion. We need to remember that the path to an accounting career may vary depending on your location, the specific roles that you're interested in. It is essential that we stay committed. We continuously learn and we adapt to changes in the field for us to succeed in an accounting role. I thank you so much for paying attention to me. The floor is now open. I'll be glad to listen to your questions. Thank you for the opportunity again, Mama Penin and your team.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Traore. I think we have bitten more than we can chew. You have fed us indeed. Rightly, as Mr. Traore mentioned, I will invite for 3 questions. Please put up your hand. I call you, you ask your questions. We are taking 3 questions in succession, all right? So Mr. Traore will answer all 3. Is that okay? Then if there are any, we come back to you. All right, the first person is Abdullahi Ahausen. Abdullahi, please unmute.
Good evening.
Yes. Blessed evening.
Thank you for this program. Actually, it's highly educative to some of us. My question is, we've realized that the professional accountant is poorly treated in public sector. I work in a tertiary education level. We will realize that at any point in time, they say that you need to have a professional qualification, that is the ICAG, and your master's before you can become an accountant. And on the other hand, they said if you have MA or any other master's, you are assistant registrar. But my brother, somebody needs 2 certificates to be at one point, and the other person need only 1 certificate. But when they bring the certificate, they place you at par. And some of us think that this is a case ICAG have to come in to fight for their members, because sometimes we don't feel comfortable when some of these things are happening, because obtaining master's certificates is time-bound. Maybe some 2 years you are done with your MA or MBA. Now some institutions have been doing it 1 year. But ICAG, you may be there for a number of years before you struggle and come, they place you at par. That is my issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We take the next question, Suleiman Abdul Latif.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Please, I wanted to find out from Mr. Alassane whether the chartered accountant that they are planning to enroll into the system? What are the process involved and what are the requirements that they are looking at? Or is it for everybody? And what institution are you looking for, the public sector or both the public sector and the private sector? And after that, what's the way forward? Is there going to be like what he's talking about, a district committee or faculty that's organized for each person and how it will be trained or monitored? What are the process like? I just want him to give us some more on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdul-Lateef. The next question, the last one for the first session, is coming from TechnoSpark 5. Please unmute.
Thank you. I'm Jacob Salifu. My question has to do with, we're talking of how to develop your skills. How will you develop your analytical skills? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Traore, the floor is yours. Mr. Traore.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was struggling to unmute myself. So thank you very much for the questions. I'll try and then respond as fast. From starting with Mr. Salifu Jacob, his question was, how can one develop their analytical skills? All right, so analytical skills are those skills that help you to evaluate information and take decisions thereof. Okay, so to be able to develop these skills, you need to read wide. Okay, you need to engage in discussions. You need to understand, because if you don't have the technical understanding of whatever you are presenting, it is difficult for you to analyze it. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Well, if I prepare financial statement and I don't understand the financial statement, or I see financial statement and I don't understand that financial statement, how do I analyze it? So in my opinion, to develop your analytical skills, you need to have the technical knowledge. 1, you need to read wide. 2, you need to be able to engage others. 3, and in that way, I would think that you'll be able to develop your analytical skills accordingly. About the non-members, section 5 of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Act. Okay, so what I said was that we have people who are practicing accounting in the country who are members of ICAG. So for instance, somebody just goes to the university, reads a degree in accounting, and a person is acting as an accountant in an organization. Why are you an accountant? Who is regulating you? It's a profession. You cannot just enter that profession and begin practicing. No, it shouldn't work that way. So what the institute is saying is that by law, you're supposed to be regulated by ICAG. So how can you be regulated by ICAG? We don't know you. So what we are saying is that come and then register with ICAG. Now, once you register with us, we can now know you and then begin monitoring you. Now, once you register with ICAG, organize a training program for all of such persons who are not yet chartered accountants. Because you are working as accountant, we cannot come and take the job from you. No, that is not possible. So what we are saying is that in the meantime, with their ethical requirements of the profession, do you know those ethical requirements? ICAG is going to organize training programs for such persons to enable them to be able to perform their role effectively. Now, after the training program, what we'll do then is that there are 2 options. We have the option for people who do not want to be chartered accountants. Of course, there are people like that. They think that the exam is difficult. They do not want to even kill themselves to even try to write the exam. And then there are people who want to pursue the profession further. So we have those 2 categories of persons. Now, if you want to pursue the chartered accountancy program, we will link you to institutions like Sleep is for the Weak Consult, so that they will train you and then give you to tuition and you become a chartered accountant. Then for those who do not want to be chartered accountant, what we do is that once we have you in our database, we will continue almost every year. You are supposed to undertake continuing professional development training. So every year it is mandatory for you to attend some training program that we'll be organizing. for you to continue working as an accountant. Otherwise, to come to a point in time where it will prevent you from pursuing your function, from pursuing any role as an accountant. What I'm saying is not applicable to only the public sector. It is both public sector and then private sector. For instance, somebody who is not a doctor cannot be allowed to practice in the private hospital, okay, and then the public hospital. So it is the same as accountant. If you are not an accountant, you are not an accountant in the private sector, you are not an accountant in the public sector. We need to sanitize the profession. Then the first one about tertiary education. Indeed, this has been a major issue. And the major culprits are those in the education sector and then the health sector, the GES and then the Ghana Health Service, as well as GTech institutions. I think earlier this year, somewhere 2-3 months ago, my council, the council of the institute, paid a courtesy call on the chief directors and then some of these major regulatory bodies to see how we can come together to ensure that our people in these institutions are not made any worse off. So the discussions have begun. I'm aware that there are a number of discussions ongoing. For those in the GES, for instance, I know there was a meeting with the Director General, who is somebody who has ICG at heart. He used to run an ICG tuition center actually in Kumasi, Area Spring Institute. Aside that, also those in the health sector, there are a number of discussions ongoing. So let's see how the discussions go. The institute's attention has been drawn to some of these issues, and there are steps to see how it can be resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Traore. Please, can we have the next set of questions? Please put up your hand if you have a question. Please put up your hand if you have a question. Okay, Felix. Felix, please unmute and ask a question.
Okay, thank you, sir. And thanks to our resource person and then the tutorial center for this good job. I just wanted to find out, like he mentioned about the fact that even though you are not chartered, they need to regulate our activities. Sometimes it looks like these things would be nice if they get the various organizations to be aware of these things, or if they are informed, so that it can help, because so many accountants or people practicing in accounting are there, and sometimes when they want to go for some of these things, their organizations don't see the need to support them to do that. And so let's say if I'm working with a district assembly, then ICAG can educate the district assembly or all public institutions, including the private institution, to know the importance of we undertaking these training sessions that will help us in our work. I think it will be better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix. We have Kennedy. Kennedy, please ask your question. Please unmute and ask your question.
Thank you very much to speak, and also I would like to thank the team for organizing this meaningful platform for us to have this interaction.
Kennedy, please unmute and ask your question.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thank the team for giving this platform for us to have this great interaction. My first question is to find out that after you have become a member, what are the expectations from ICAG, apart from maybe you paying your membership dues? What other expectations are required from ICAG as an institute? And also, I think I joined the discussion a bit late. So the CPDs or the CPD programs, what are these programs that maybe one can be practicing after he or she becomes a member or graduates? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's take one question from the chat box from Paul. Paul is asking, at what point does a chartered accountant who blows a whistle breach on the principles of confidentiality? That is from Paul. At what point is confidentiality breached when a chartered accountant blows a whistle? Okay, Mr. Crowley, you can now take the floor.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity once again. So I'm going to he suggested that be aware of the issue of non-members practice as accountant. Yes, that is well noted. We've taken steps. Indeed, we've written to the Controller and Accountant General. We've written to the Ghana Audit Service. We've written to the Public Service Commission. We've written to the Local Government Service. There were 6 Ghana Employers Association and the Association of Ghana Industry to inform them of the requirements or the provision of the law. But let me add quickly that this provision that I mentioned is not how shall I even put it? It's not to the effect that only chartered accountants are the ones who can work as accountants in the organization. What I indicated was if you are not a member of ICAG. Now, by law, membership of ICAG is about 5 or 6 different categories. So, for instance, 1, we have student members. So even if you're a student of ICAG, you're a member of ICAG. In that case, we call you a student member. So if you're a student member, this provision does not apply to you. What we are talking about is for people who have neither registered as student nor done anything at all. Just nobody knows them. Let me put it that way. Okay, so we have student members, we have actual members, we have associate members. There are those who have passed the exams, awaiting full membership. Then we have full members, we have firm members, and then we have the fellows. So that is a membership category of ICAG. So yes, the provision I mentioned does not necessarily apply to people who are registered as students of the institute. No, you are known by the institute, and therefore you don't have a problem. It is those people who have decided that they want to practice, but they don't want anybody to know them. They are hiding from the institute. You cannot practice if we don't know you. Suggestion has been taken. We'll try and then write to the local government service, or we write to all the MDs through the means. Kennedy asked that after membership, what are the expectations by ICAG for its members? The expectations we have of you is that you project and protect the profession. And that is why we expect that you comply with the ethical requirements of the profession. We expect that you promote the profession. We expect that you go out there and then make the profession proud. We expect that you undertake your CPDs. We expect that you perform your work well as an accountant. That is the expectation that we have of you. I don't know if that answers your question. But we have the view that once you're a member of the institute, you're a CA, you can use the title, you can undertake assignment that you want, provided it is within the law and then go out and make us proud, basically. You also asked about CPD programs available. The CPD programs are under my office as training and development. CPD stands for continuing professional development, and it is that training that we undertake to develop ourselves after even becoming professional accountants. There are a number of CPD programs that we organize. We have the paid ones, we have the unpaid ones. So for the paid ones, we'll normally send emails to the members of the institute to attend such CPDs. We sometimes advertise them in the papers as well. And they are normally on social media with the flyers. So you can attend those ones. Aside that, also, we have the unpaid ones. The unpaid ones, we have ones that are organized by the various faculties that I mentioned. So the 6 faculties, they are supposed to organize CPD every quarter. Okay, so they all do that. Then aside those ones, there are also what we call the public lectures that the institute organizes. Now, these are CPD, continuing professional development. Aside that, the institute also organizes training programs. For instance, we have diploma program that we offer. We have certificate program that we offer. That's aside the CE. There are certification program. For instance, we recently we are doing a post-chartered diploma in advanced business analytics, in forensic audit, in ESG. Early next year, we are rolling out training programs in Islamic finance, in NGO accounting, in financial modeling. These are the kind of training programs that we are coming up with. Paul asked about confidentiality and whistleblowing. I mentioned that in my presentation, the fact that there are exceptions to the rule of confidentiality. Now you can breach the rule of confidentiality where, according to law, okay, where there is a legality issue, okay, how do we call it? You can breach it where issues or where there's a public order breach, okay, that is going to happen. So in that case, you are not under obligation, or you are under obligation to disclose such information if indeed you realize that there is something that is going to, or there's public law and order that is going to be affected, public peace, that is an illegality is going to be committed. Yeah, so in as much as they are supposed to be confidential, there are some exceptions that are provided for in the law, okay, that if it is a requirement of law for you to disclose, you can disclose. If it's a requirement of the profession to disclose, you can disclose. So sometimes, for instance, as an auditor, you have information about it. They can come to you and then you are supposed to disclose indeed the working papers that you did. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I spoke about the auditing firm that was following the collapse of the banks. They did their work. ICAG went and examined their books. In that case, you cannot say confidentiality, so you let ICAG view your books. It is a requirement of the profession. You're supposed to comply. Sometimes there's a requirement of law for you to disclose. And in instances where there's an illegality perpetrated, then whistleblowing can come in, and then you'll be safe. So yes, although there's confidentiality, there are instances, there are exceptions to the rule. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Traore. We will take the last sets of questions. There is one in the chat box from Ibrahim Al-Hassan. He asks, please, I want to know what brings about difference in bookkeeping and financial reporting standards in public sector. Thank you. I'll take the next question from Kweku Arthur. Ibrahim, I've read your question. Kweku Arthur, please unmute.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Blessed evening.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And then thank you very much for the impactful webinar that you have organized. I want to know, per the submission of our facilitator, he made mention that under ICAG, they have 6 faculties. Can one be part of all the 6 faculties? That is one of my questions. And then secondly, assuming if I am an accountant in business, but not in practice, can I certify other organizations' accounts? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Kweku. Stephen, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you once again. Please, I want to ask that with a growing number of qualified chartered accountants, I think you made mention of about we are getting to 10,000 or so. I just want to find out, is it a worrying situation to the institute, or looking at how fragile our employment system is in Ghana here? And also, I want to ask again that auditors, especially auditors in the public sector, most of them,
you are taking double salary. What is a crime? What is a crime?
I don't.
So how for him that his case is get bad? You please need to investigate, and if he's found culpable.
Hello.
Yes, Stephen, we can hear you.
You know, initially he was arguing, and later
you may have to get away from where you are, the minister.
No,
all right. So, Stephen, please reposition yourself and come again. Ibrahim Abdul Rafiu, please ask the last question.
Okay. Good evening, please.
Yes,
And I'm not the one who asked the first one. I think the Ibrahims are more than one on the platform.
Yes,
so
I reckon. Yeah. Sorry
so
about
that's a different. Okay. Mine has to do with international organizations. Let's say that AU, ECOWAS, and other auxiliary firms. When they advertise the job, they use ACCA, CPA, and all the other international accounting designations. I don't know, does that mean that if you are ICAG, they don't recognize that, or like, I don't get it. So if there can be a clarification on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Charlie.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So I'll try to give some responses to the issues raised. All right, so the first issue that was about the difference in bookkeeping and financial reporting standards in public sector. I don't know if I understand the question well, but public sector accounting has its own set of financial reporting standards. We call them the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, the IPSAS. So public sector entities are supposed to report or prepare their financial statement based on the IPSAS. There are a number of accounting bases as well in the public sector. For instance, there is cash accounting, there is modified cash accounting, there is accrual accounting, and then there's modified accrual accounting. The public sector of Ghana has undergone a number of movements. We used to practice cash accounting system, and we've gone through the mill. Beginning this year, financial statements of public sector entities are supposed to be prepared using the accrual accounting concept. Okay, so this year's financial statement will be the first to be prepared in full compliance with the accounting accrual accounting concept. So if Ibrahim Al-Hassan, if you ask me, the difference in bookkeeping and financial reporting standards in the public sector is as a result, perhaps, of the different accounting bases that we have in the public sector. But like I said, there has been a move to harmonize the way financial reporting is done in the public sector. And from this year, financial statements in the public sector of Ghana are supposed to be prepared using the accrual accounting concept. That's accrual, the IPSAS that were developed based on the accrual accounting concept. I hope that answers your question, if only I got the understanding well. The faculties. There are 6 faculties. By ICAG's operations, the policy that we have, you can join a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3. So you cannot join all 6 faculties. You can join a maximum of 3 faculties at a time. You asked about accountant in business and not practice, whether you can certify accounts. If I understand your question well, if you say certify account, does it mean sign account as an auditor? If it is that, then you cannot sign account as an auditor if you are not given a practice license. For people who are working as auditors, they have been given what we call a practice license to practice accountancy. They undergo further training from what we have as general accountant. And aside that, they should have worked in an audit firm for at least 4 years, full time. It is believed then that they will now have the ability or the capability to audit companies. So if you are not an auditor certified so as an auditor by ICAG, you cannot sign company accounts in Ghana. But that said, based on the new act that came up, ICAG has now begun issuing the process, has started the process of issuing non-audit licenses. So for accountants who want to practice other forms of services aside assurance service, that's the audits, what we call audit, you can obtain what we call a non-audit license or non-assurance license or certificate from the institute. So we started that this year. The process is ongoing. You can apply for it from the membership portal. The requirement is that you should have been an accountant in good standing for at least 4 years. Once you satisfy that basic requirement, you can apply for that license. Stephen Mensah asks about the growing number of CAs, whether it is a worrying situation to the institute. My answer to that is that not at all. Indeed, the institute will want the membership to grow, because once you grow to a stage, you have the voice, and you can influence policy in the country. So there are professional bodies who have many more. So even the 10,000, if I must finish off, the World Bank conducted a survey. Was it 2012? It was 2008. The World Bank conducted a survey on the accounts that are needed in Ghana's economic asset. Now, as of that time, 2008, the result was that Ghana's economy needed about. Now, it was projected in 2015 that number has been at least 20,000 chartered accountants. Recent happenings, in my opinion, demand that we need many more chartered accountants in the economy because of the growing number of corporate governance issues. Every company in the country needs a chartered accountant, is an accountant. There's no company that can operate without an accountant, operate effectively. So yes, to the extent that there are people are building or setting up companies, to the extent that accountants are diversified into other areas, audit, tax practice, forensics, academia. Okay, we need many more accountants. So we are not worried at all. Then I think there was, which wasn't very clear. There was something about auditors taking double salary, but the question was not very clear. I think we lost you briefly there. So I didn't really understand the question. Then the last question was Ibrahim Abdurrafiu. He was asking about when international organizations advertise, so his question was, does it mean that you cannot? No, it is not so, Abdul. Indeed, the CA is a brand, a global brand. So, for instance, there is ICA England and Wales, ICA South Africa, ICA Nigeria, ICA Ghana, ICA Kenya, etc., etc. In some jurisdictions, what they know is CPA. That is how they call their CPAs. So when somebody from that country advertises and says a CPA, the person is basically referring to a CA as well. So once the advert is done, you can apply if you meet all the other criteria. With that said, let me add that the CA qualification is global in nature. And we have a lot of chartered accountants from Ghana who are practicing worldwide. I'm sure we may know one or two people who have qualified from Ghana here and are working outside of the country. Indeed, if we should do a little survey in the audit firms, this year, a lot of staff of our audit firms, especially the Big Four, who are operating in Ghana, a lot of their staff who are CAs have moved on to their offices outside of the country. Some have moved to the States, some have moved to the UK, in other offices in other countries. They are CAs, but they are making it big. So let no one deceive you that once you have the CA qualification, you cannot work anywhere. You can work anywhere. We sit in Ghana, we do consultancy for foreign companies. So people do it every now and then. So please, let no one deceive you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think there was a question in the chat box about annual subscription. Student subscription. I think it's 300 cedis. So I'll hand over to my moderator and then to continue with the discussion. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Traoli. It has been an awesome session, and I'm sure that we are all inspired and super motivated to be members of this enviable institution. I shall give the floor to the host, Patrick, to carry on. Patrick, if you're on the call.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Grandmaster. Grandmaster happens to be our case study lecturer for Sleep is for the Weak consult. Grandmaster, thank you very much. And I would thank Mr. Abuaje Jima, Gideon, for also a wonderful presentation. We are so blessed to have you guys around. And Mr. Alasan, your presentation was also solid, and it was on point. Thank you very much. All your busy schedules and busy activities, you also squeeze yourselves to have time with us. We are blessed to have you. We thank you so much. I'll add some few words, then we sign out. Okay. Myself, ICAG has really helped me. And I used only 4 months to charter because I was having master's degree, and I took exemptions of 9 papers, and I wrote it in within a diet, all the 5 papers, and I passed. You can do it. As my brother would say, nothing there inside. For the people, nothing there inside. You can do it. It's based on determination and consistency that you are going to learn and pass. Okay, I always tell students that you can't do magic. You can't do magic if you don't start now. If not now, when? If not you, who? If not here in Ghana, where? So brothers and sisters, Sleep is for the Weak consult, ICAG Center, we are there. You can also sign up onto us, and we will help you charter. Brothers and sisters, we have come to the end of this webinar section, and we thank our resource personnel so much for giving us this insight. The videos and everything will be shared on YouTube, where you can have access to them. So, colleagues, brothers and sisters, thank you very much. We sign out. I've been your host. My name is James Patrick Osaikofo. My friends call me Company. Have a blessed evening. Bye.
Nketia, you'll be bad, brother. You, Nketia. You don't see me, you don't call me.
Recording in progress.